today I want to try and answer the question that I was asked: how thin of a piece of wood can I actually sand on this machine? Now, the manual that came with this machine clearly states minimum sanding thickness 1/4 of an inch. But I got a feeling I can go thinner than that. Now, there's something that I never noticed until just now, and that is that it is possible to raise the conveyor up to the point where the sanding drums actually will rub on the conveyor itself. I never noticed that before until just now. I always thought there'd be some sort of a safety stop. So I guess I'm going to have to be careful in the future. I still have on the 150 and 220 grit from the last project. So that's what I'm going to use for this test. Well, it's really obvious that it's going to be able to handle something 1/4 of an inch thick. But how about something that's only about 1/16 of an inch thick? Now, when I was setting this thing up, about 2 years ago, I went to great pains to make sure that the distance from the belt to the drums was the same on this side as on this side. However, when you're sanding something really thin like that, even if it's slightly out, well, I guess it'd have to be a little bit more than slightly, but it is possible that when it gets to the place where you're doing something really thin, I don't mean like a piece of paper, but something really thin, it's possible that this side could start rubbing before this side would. So I would imagine the best place to do your sanding is right in the middle here. And then kind of watch out to make sure that you don't actually start hitting the conveyor. Now, another thing I want to keep in mind is that this drum here is slightly closer to the conveyor than this drum. And that's because this drum will take off a little bit, and then the piece will pass through, and then this drum will take off a little bit more. So I want to make sure that when I adjust everything here, I've got this all the way in, so I'm sure that this drum here, which is the lowest drum, or the closest to the conveyor belt, is going to actually start rubbing on the wood. And this is the way I do it. Okay, I can hear it starting to rub there. Okay, now I'm going to back off exactly 1 turn. Now I can get my little piece of wood out. Now I'm going to go ahead exactly 1 turn. Less a little bit. Just want to play it safe. Now I just had a thought here. These drums are turning upward of probably 3,000 RPM. The centrifugal force on these belts to make them sort of widen out is probably pretty significant. And if the belt was a little bit loose, it's possible that it would sort of like flap, and it could touch the conveyor, and that wouldn't be very good. So I think what I'm going to have to do is I'm still going to do this test, but I'm going to make a little sled that I can use that will carry this through underneath the drums, and that way there's no danger of these drums touching the conveyor belt. Yeah, the sudden smell of burning rubber, that would be a little disconcerting. If you watched any of my other videos, you'll remember this sled. I used it to pass the rings through for the segmented flower pot and the Christmas candy bowls and the Christmas cake platter. Well, I'm thinking, why can't I make a sled on a smaller scale? Use this piece of scrap wood here, and I could have something in behind here to hold it so that it doesn't come shooting back and hitting me. And I think this will work. I'm going to try that. Now, because there is a slight chance that, say, this side is slightly higher or closer to the drums than this side, I want to pass this board through a few times until I know for sure that this board is going to be completely parallel. The top of this board will be completely parallel to the bottom of the sanding drums. And that way, when I pass the thin piece through, I'll know that it's going to be perfectly even on both sides. Makes sense to me anyway. Okay, what I've done is I've fastened a little piece on the end of the board, and it's just a little bit proud of the surface of this board. And that way it will keep this little piece from shooting back out at me. Now maybe this is a good time to mention that you shouldn't stand directly behind whatever it is you're feeding through like that, because there is the chance that it could slip off the sled, and the drums will shoot the piece back at you, probably like at 60 miles an hour, and boy, that'll get your attention real fast. So by using a sled like this, I can sand something very, very thin. If a person was to modify it and make the sled bigger, you could maybe like sand the backs for guitars or something like that. I don't know why a person would want to sand something so thin. But, you know, this is really thin, about a 32nd of an inch, I guess. And it worked quite well. And it's the same thickness all the way along. It's not like this end is thicker than this end, or this side is thicker than this side. It's the same thickness all the way along. So to that guy that asked me a couple of months ago, how thin will it sand? It'll sand real thin. I could have sanded a little bit thinner than this yet, but what for? And you just have to remember that you want to make a sled to carry it through. You know, you can make the sled wider or longer. And you know, if you wanted to do like a guitar back or something like that, it would work great. Now of course for something like a guitar back, you would have to refinish it with like an orbital sander, of course, touch it up. But this actually is pretty good.